Hey, everyone. Welcome back to another delusional episode of Is This Thing On? Is it on, babe?
I don't know. Is it?
I don't know. It could.
Seems like everything is running. It's registering my voice.
It's registering my voice.
Yeah. And who am I?
Who are you?
I'm the guy that started by talking about vampires last time.
Uh-huh.
So if the audience remembers who that is, I am Trevor, formerly known as
Richard.
Now known as
Regina Denise.
Yes. I have now adopted the name that my parents originally were planning to give me if I were a girl, which is Regina Denise.
Regina Denise.
I'm glad I was not female, because I'm pretty sure I do not want the name Regina Denise.
I don't either. No. And I hope we don't name our children Regina Denise.
No offense to you, Mom and Dad, in case you're listening.
They're always listening.
Yeah, always listening.
Always.
They're listening right now.
Yes, they are, because we're recording this right now at your house.
Yes, which we will not disclose the location of.
No, we will not.
I may have disclosed more accurate information about the whereabouts of this podcast than I intended to last time.
And I have very devoted fans, as you can tell.
Yes, very devoted fans, as you are listening right now,
So guys, this is my silly boyfriend back on by popular demand, because apparently you guys love him.
I mean, I think popular demand is just the host asking for me to come back on. So
No.
That's popular enough.
Yeah, I guess you could say that.
Yeah.
Whatever you say, babe.
So what is tonight's theme?
We already sucked the blood out of the vampire discussion.
That's right. Vampires again. No, I'm just joking.
Vampires Part 2.
Vampires Part 2.
No, not vampires. We're gonna go over, I think, like cults or religion, like different like wacky religions.
Wacky religions, cults.
Like just stuff that you know, like that's kind of wacky, like
stuff that I know.
Folklore-ish. I don't know.
I think you also wanted to talk maybe about like urban legends.
Mm-hmm.
So just anything and everything that has to do with phenomenological study, like perception of reality and how people see the world. Yeah? Sound good?
Yeah.
Does that sound good to everybody else there?
I mean, they don't have a choice. They just click play and they're listening to this nonsense.
Hopefully none of you out there are like your teacher, I believe, the co-teacher that you have who was Mormon and you didn't know it.
That's actually my main teacher.
Your main teacher, okay. We will not mention names once more, but in case you are listening out there, she's sorry.
I am sorry. I apologize to all the members of the Latter-day Saints community.
Yeah. So if you are a Latter-day Saint, a Jehovah's Witness, a Buddhist, a Muslim,
a Flying Spaghetti Monster sympathizer,
an atheist, a Christian, a believer in the strange or the occult, we're going to be talking about these topics tonight. So if you are not interested in any of this or not interested in having any information possibly challenging your preconceived notions, please turn off now.
Yeah. Listener discretion advised.
Listener discretion is advised. So what do you want to talk about first?
I've always been interested in Scientology.
Okay.
Particularly because, as we know, the father of Hollywood, Mr. Tom Cruise, is always somehow in the spotlight, right? And a huge part of that is because he belongs to the Church of Scientology. Yeah. What I have heard about this Church of Scientology is that they have this study of books that they do called Dianetics, I think, and it's basically like a series of it's like levels, right? Yes. And so like you're going up in the levels, and in each level you're like required to do some sort of like cleaning or cleansing of some sort, right? And it's to reach the ultimate nirvana. I don't know.
Yeah.
I'm mixing Buddhism with
I think they refer to it as being in clear or being in the clear or
yeah.
something like that. Being cleared of your issues or your problems.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, so Tom Cruise being the more famous of the Scientologists, apologists,
Him and
uh,
Travolta.
him and John Travolta. Some other people that you probably would be surprised to know that they're part of that group. Um, they have a very prominent hold in California and mostly in Hollywood. And that was one of the main polls that the church, in air quotes, of Scientology was trying to get at, was that they were trying to legitimize their religion by getting as many famous people as a part of their cult as possible.
There's actually what was that show? King on a Hill or
King of the Hill?
yes, it was with Kevin James, Leah Remini, and someone else, right?
No, King of Queens.
King of Queens. There we
King
go.
of the Hill is, dang it, Bobby, do I look like I know what
Yeah.
a JPEG is? Oh, it's all toilet sounds.
Okay, well no, King of Queens.
King of Queens, yes.
Leah Remini, who was like the female lead of that show, was heavily involved actually in the Church of Scientology for many, many years. And I think a few years ago, she came out saying that she had already left the church and said it was incredibly damaging to her psyche, to her whole life. And she wrote this whole, I think it was in her memoir, but she wrote this whole like expose of like how bad the Church of Scientology is. And I think the common thing here in Church of Scientology is that Scientologists heavily brainwash people, as do most cult leaders and most culty-like religions, right? I would even say it's going to sound kind of blasphemous, and sorry, Lord, but even there's certain branches of Christian cults and religions where it's borderline brainwashy. And because if you really think about it, every sort of religion / cult / sect or whatever, the two main tactics that they feed into is manipulation of some sort, to gain members, to gain traction, to appease to something. Typically, I've noticed that the common denominator is they feed on people that are lacking something. It could be people that are very poor. It could be people that are not all there in the membrane. It's like a variety of things. Like I know in Scientology, if you really want to be committed, like you have to give up your entire salary, like your whole money.
Yeah.
Like there's a lot of money that goes behind it, and it's to advance these cleansing sessions that they have with the Dianetics book that they follow, and I think from what I've seen, it's like this almost like Sony Walkman device, right?
Yes.
They put into their ears and they listen to all these like lectures or sermons about how to, I don't know, like rise and I guess at this point, because Travolta and Cruise have been in Scientology for so long and they're like the primary figureheads of that religion, they're probably considered like high priests at this point, right? It's safe to say, because they've brought in so many members of Hollywood, and one of the biggest things, actually, and good for her, we don't support divorce. Obviously, I don't, but if it's psychologically abusing and is forcing your own child to go into something that they're unaware of, yeah, I guess, good for Katie Holmes divorcing Tom Cruise, because and she was actually smart about it too. The way she went about it was that her dad was a lawyer, so he drafted up their, I believe, what was it called? What's that document you have to sign? Prenup, which, rich or poor, is very important to have, because you do not want to get screwed on both ends. So, so basically, they were waiting a certain age for Suri, their daughter, to turn before he would indoctrinate her into Scientology. Because I think there's a certain age where they can't indoctrinate children, but I'm not quite sure because I've never really looked it up. But basically, Katie Holmes grew up Roman Catholic, and she was Roman Catholic probably up until she met Tom Cruise, and then he was like, well, we're married now, and you are my wife, and you have these Church of Scientology duties. And I think she never really wanted to be a part of it. And actually, from what I heard, was that the Church of Scientology actually chose Katie Holmes to be his wife. Like, they had this whole list of people, I think along with Nicole Kidman, because his first wife was actually Nicole Kidman, and they had children together and everything. Adopted children. They didn't have any, like, biological children together. But they, like, it was creepy how they did it. It was like a vetting process. They were looking at all these girls that would be, like, potential candidates for him, and they settled on Katie Holmes. They were married for a little while. They had their daughter, and then all of a sudden it started getting deeper and deeper, and he started, like, doing weird things and pulling things from out of the rug that she didn't know about. So she very quietly went about and divorced him without him knowing, really. And she got out of there before it got crazier, because once you are fully immersed in Scientology, it's pretty wacky. From what I hear, like, they're not very supportive of medicine, like modern medicine.
Yeah.
They don't like antipsychotics. They don't like antidepressants. I think I saw a video where he was talking very passionately on why he hates psychiatric medication.
Yeah.
And he was, like, angry, like, fuming about it.
Yeah. Because, to give a little background on that, they believe that any kind of psychological issue that you may have is the result of what are called body thetans. They're these spiritual beings that kind of cling on to your existence, and not necessarily like what we would understand as demons, but they're more like lost spirits. Because to get a little bit of background about what Scientology actually is, it was started by a writer by the name of L. Ron Hubbard, who was a science fiction writer and reasonably mediocre, not super successful in terms of his books, but one of them was a big hit, and it was a book called Dianetics. And I believe his original intention was to make it a science fiction book about a hypothetical religion. But people started coming to him and actually believing that it was real. And he just kind of went with it and didn't stop people from coming to him as their guru. So he essentially started what was something similar to a private navy. He would have his own boat that he made from his income of sales of books, and he would induct people into what they call the organization. And it had a ranking system. They followed a very militaristic style of captain and sergeant and things like that on the boat. And that just kind of slowly evolved over time into a more and more full-on religion. And the idea behind the book that he talked about, I think he also wrote another book, I'm not sure what the name of it was, but it kind of gave a little bit more of a background history as to why his religion means these things. And it was essentially, there's this ancient alien being called Xenu, who was cast out by the other superior aliens, and he brought with him his people, his servants, and they were all dropped into volcanoes, or a big volcano on Earth, from their spaceships that look ironically like jet planes. And I know, yeah, I'm trying to remember this accurately, and I don't think I'm making this up, but they all get dropped into a volcano and die.
Okay.
And their spirits get shot out and now inhabit the beings of Earth. And so technically, according to Scientology, every single human being on the planet is actually a reincarnation or a host of an extra-dimensional or extra-galactic alien spirit. And then there's these evil ones that are thetans that are clinging to you and trying to destroy you and trying to get rid of you. And an interesting thing about why probably Tom Cruise was not bringing Siri into, is that the name of the
Yeah.
tribe? Into the religion immediately is because they believe that because every single person is essentially a reincarnation of an alien, they don't believe that they have the same parental rights that other normal human beings believe that they do over their children, because their children are literally separate beings from them. They're their own autonomous creature that they have no right over. But for some reason, the church does have a right over, at least the Church of Scientology. So they use these machines that you hold onto. It's like two like metal cans that you grab onto, and I think it's based off of some sort of like electrical impulse, and it makes a little meter go right and left. And they have one of their Scientology interviewers ask you a series of questions, and this is how they determine how many thetans you have and how many trainings that you have to go to in order to get rid of these thetans to become cleared of all these things. And so the process is lifelong. And as the religion developed, more levels were added. And they didn't do it very smartly either. They just kind of dropped new levels. Like, oh, DLC now dropped. You got to get this loot box over here. I'm joking. But in order to achieve these new levels, it's pretty much like a video game.
That's what I was going to say. It sounds like you're going through all the different...
You start at level 0 as just an inductee, and you go through your trainings and your cleanings, and you go through serving the organization. And if you're really cool, you can like specialize your class into one of the org members, and you can become part of that kind of pseudo-military organization. And as you level up in that, you literally gain new powers. You gain the power to like heal yourself, or you gain the power to will things into or out of existence, because you're like a super-powered alien, and the only thing stopping you is your lack of realization of what you are as an alien and your power over the known universe. And so this is the kind of craziness that you probably don't think of when you think of like, oh, well, these Hollywood actors and their wacky religion, whatever. They actually believe they're aliens in fleshy bodies that have powers to control the universe with their mind. But Tom Cruise is a great actor.
Other than that, he's a phenomenal actor, I would say. Like, he really is very methodological.
Yeah, he does all of his own stunts, and that's a big deal to him, and a big deal for people who hire him as the actor.
Doesn't seem like he ages either.
John Travolta was great in what is that?
Saturday Night Fever.
Saturday Night Fever, and also Pulp Fiction.
Pulp Fiction.
Yeah, he pretty much plays kind of the same person every time.
He does.
But he does that person really well.
Yeah. So that's like really, really crazy to think about, that all these celebrities, will do all these things to get all these roles, and
and that's the other aspect of it, is that it's not just a religion, and it's not just a way to spiritualize your existence into a higher level of being, but it's also essentially a gang. It's like a union for actors. It controls so many people that it controls aspects of Hollywood as well.
It definitely controls their assets too. I would say, I'm pretty sure he's given a hefty amount of his money, if not most of it, to the Church of Scientology, because like they demand like all your money. Like, there's people, I've read up that there's people that have gone like literally broke and hungry from all the money they've given up to Scientology. And that they were very, very much exploited. There's a few other cults that I read about that, like, a lot of the ones that interest me were from like probably like the 60s and 70s. Okay. There was one that I don't remember what it was called. It was like Children of Christ or something. Okay. It had the name Christ in it, right? Something like that. And they were on like this island, and basically the main leader caused them all to lead each other in a mass suicide, because
the drinking the Kool-Aid?
Yes,
yeah.
That's where the drinking of the Kool-Aid phrase comes from. Mm-hmm. So they all drank it, and they all died at the same time. Like, this dude was like, if you do this, you're gonna ascend into ultimate nirvana. You'll be the great ascender stuff like that. So, and it really makes you think, why? Apart, because I feel like not all of us, but a good chunk of us strive to be sometimes like a god, right? And we're so caught up in our own like selfishness that we think, you know, like, oh, we're so great, we're so powerful, we can do all these things that, you know, and then it gets to our head, and then we end up doing and creating evil. And a lot of these, it's weird because a lot of these cults started off as like, very small, like very like in-house, in communes. Well, actually, like that was very common, I think, in the 60s and 70s. Like you like took your family to like a commune, you lived there with other people, you like did the whole kumbaya my lord thing. And then like you were initiated. It's like you were all living together, and like, I mean, humans all living together, part of a commune, I think that's not a foreign concept, but them engaging in exploitative things like being in these religions and cults is just, and then but doing that to like harm people. Like, I mean, you could say that like what Charles Manson started, like the Manson family thing, that in itself was also like a cult religion too, because he got a good amount of people to go out and just do a murder spree.
Called cult of personality.
And so they went out and they killed people in cold blood and didn't care. And some of these people, I mean, they're old as shit, but they're still like, I think one of them was up for parole last year or a few years ago because he was originally involved in the Manson murders. And obviously, Sharon Tate was one of the victims. Her sister, Deborah Tate, was like, under no circumstances are we letting this person have parole. Like, it's been 60 years, but they murdered my sister. And they had this whole petitions, because now you can sign petitions online to not let this person have parole. I think it was like Tex Wilson or something. Tex something, it was a nickname. But he was one of the original Manson family murder people. And
Manson family murder people. Coming to ABC next Monday.
Why does that sound like a family sitcom? But yeah, no, it's like it's really, really crazy to think that so many of these people got away with it. But it's because they were mass manipulators. They got away with feeding into people's vulnerabilities.
Because technically they didn't kill anybody. Their followers did.
Yeah. But isn't that still, can't you still get like arrested for conspiring?
Yeah, conspiracy for murder and aiding and abetting a criminal. And I mean, if you tell another person to kill somebody, that's requesting an assassination. That's like hiring a hitman.
Yeah.
You don't exchange money, so it's probably legally considered something else. But yeah, you're still culpable for that.
And I think, like, just like what drives people to do that? Like that's my thing. Like, because religion, a lot of it is a man-made construct, and so like, what drives people to like make a set of rules, a doctrine, and then how do they go about like imposing their doctrine, their beliefs onto someone else, but really make them believe what they're believing, and then from then on make them go and hunt people down to be in their cult religion. Like, I mean, there's a lot of like, what's the word? I mean, a lot of it is heavily psychological. I mean, you're feeding into the basic things like fear, belonging, sense of worth, like just all the basic human emotions, I think.
I mean, the same idea can probably be applied to gangs. Is why do people join gangs if they know that they're going to
protection?
They're going to be become murderers or drug dealers or
For protection.
prostitutes.
It's like I scratch your back, you scratch mine.
Yeah, protection, benefits, being a part of something, having a place to belong in the world.
So you think that unhealthy family dynamics could possibly cause?
I mean, they can definitely cause that, yeah. If you have no other place to go, then why not go to your quote-unquote family?
Mm-hmm.
I mean, that's what the mafia called their own organization. It's like, we call it the family. Yeah. You join the family.
Familia.
You're part of the family. I'm doing the Italian hand thing right now for all of those who can't see
Familia.
it. They are family.
What other religion is really interesting to talk about?
I don't know if we've really finished up with Church of Scientology, but something that I thought that was interesting that you mentioned was the idea of we want to become like God. We want to become gods. We want to have control over our own lives, our own authority.
Well, that's essentially why I think a lot of religions do get started, because people want a how, when, where, why, and they want a purpose. They want to explain why something happens, and that's like, I mean, if you date it back to like kind of like the Mayans and the Incas, like they wanted to know when the sun went down so they can please their gods, so they wanted to know, well, if it's raining, that means our God must be sad, must be mad. If it's thundering, oh, he's, and so people always, for the dawn of time, have looked for a why and a how and a where. And I think that's the reason why there's all these religions besides Christianity. I mean, we're Christians and we believe that the only truth is Jesus Christ, but, the people that don't believe that that's the only truth, right? What is the reasoning for, I guess, going into, like, veering off into their own path and doing their own thing? And because
I think if we're going to take this from like an apologetics standpoint, it's like giving a reason for our faith. When you look at the way that we're created to be, is that we're created to be in a relationship with God and to work with our hands, to follow the rules that He's set up, to be living as properly ordered humans. But then the fall happened, and we lost that relationship. We lost the ability to follow the rules because we broke them. And now we're trying to find ways to reestablish that without actually going back to the true God. We're seeing the things around us. We're recognizing in creation that there must be a God. There must be something that exists beyond us. And so we have to give a name to that, and we have to appease it. Otherwise, it's going to get pissed at us. Because we're obviously not doing everything right. So if we're making laws that we fail at ourselves, then if the being beyond us is making laws for us as well, we're surely failing them as well. So we have to do sacrifices in order to please Him. We have to kill people on altars. We need to burn villages. We need to go pillage this nation over here in order to please our God. And it gives them control. Because if they can appease the being that is beyond them, then they have some control of the world that they exist in. If you can make Zeus calm down, then you can control the thunder and the lightning.
so really, what most of us seek, God or not God, is a sense of control.
A sense of control, a sense of belonging, a sense of knowing where you are in the universe. Because a lot of people just don't have that. They're like a point. Like the mathematical definition of any point in space, it has no definite dimension. It has no height nor width nor z-axis or x-axis or y-axis, nothing. It's just a point. It's hypothetical. It exists at this one specific area in space. And if you don't have any coordinates around it, if you have no rays or vectors or anything like that, it's meaningless. A point in the middle of nothing is meaningless. And so people feel that. They feel that they're a point. But if they see a bunch of other points that are also in a similar situation like them, and they draw lines between them, This is how cultures develop, how religions develop. It's like if we can all band together, we can build a worldview for ourselves and have some sort of grounding.
Interesting.
Interesting. Yes, this is interesting.
Well, it is interesting because, like, I've mentioned, like, for the longest time, people have always wanted a sense of purpose, sense of belonging. And it's funny how people decide that they're going to believe something. Because everyone's motivated by different things. I mean, I'm motivated by the fact that, again, because we're Christian, is that we have a one true God that's sovereign, that watches over us in the universe and made the entire universe. And that is enough for me to believe that he's in control of absolutely everything. And I don't need nor feel the urge to go and worship another God or make a god of myself, because I feel like some religions kind of emphasize that, like find the inner zen, the inner, like,
find the God within yourself.
Exactly.
Recognize that you and God are the same.
The oneness,
Pantheism,
right?
panentheism.
Pantheism. And one could say that there's a verse in Galatians where we're literally talking about being all oneness in God. And some might use that to misconstrue the Bible and say, well, I mean, God was a hippie because he's literally talking about the oneness. And it's like, no, he's talking about how we're all going to be equal in heaven, that we're all going to be worshiping at his feet, no matter if we were black, white, or Asian, or whatever. So, and to me, that's beautiful, and that's enough for me to be like, you know what, I want to follow Christ for the rest of my life. So, I don't know what everybody else's, like, point of view is at this point. I don't know if you're Buddhist or you're Muslim, or, you know. And I've heard people say, well, what if we all have the same God? You just all call him by different names. And it's like, yeah, but, like, how can that be true? That we all have the same God, we just call him different names. I mean, he does have different names in the Bible. He has Yahweh, Yeshua, Abba, Emmanuel, Jehovah Jireh, like, so many names. But I don't know, if you look at, I don't know, a lot of religions have different rules. And I think I'll say this about Christianity versus all the other religions. If you're looking at Christianity as a set of rules and laws and commandments that you have to follow, you're doing it all wrong.
You're missing the point.
And you're just being like a Pharisee at that point. You're being legalistic. Now, following a set of rules, instructions, laws might work in something, for example, like Hinduism or being a Muslim. What's the religion that Muslims follow? Islam. Islamic. Being Mormon. I know Mormons have like a set of rules that they have to follow. They have to wear these undergarments.
The entire lifestyle that they have to live by.
They can't eat. They can't drink or consume coffee, caffeine, alcohol, because it's considered impure. It's considered dirty, and they don't want to, I guess, what's the word?
Defile themselves?
Exactly. And
going back to your point about talking about if God is everything or are you God kind of thing, there's something that I've noticed, and it's becoming a lot more popular recently, probably because of the influence of Joe Rogan and other people like that. We're name dropping other podcasters.
Shout out to Joe Rogan.
Shout out to Joe Rogan, Jordan Peterson. But there's a growing trend of people who are saying that things like psilocybin and other mushroom-based ayahuasca drugs that produce hallucinogenic effects are the true key to understanding who you are and the universe and God and stuff like that. And different people have different reactions to it. Some say that they're experiencing the same thing in a small group. But in reality, it all comes down to most people experience one of three things. They either experience that they're God, and that God is just everything and everyone, and we should all be happy.
Okay. So the oneness.
That they are an awful, horrible person. Wow. Who would knew? Or they have some sort of wacky, crazy trip that makes no sense. It's usually one of the three results that people go on, like machine elves and things like that. And so, when it comes down to it, I think there's a philosophical question that has bugged many people for a long time. Don't cough into the mic there.
I'm coughing.
There's a philosophical question that's plagued people for a long time, is the answer of the one and the many.
Mm-hmm.
So how can there be the existing of things in many forms?
We're going to take a commercial break because I'm like coughing my guts out.
Okay.
I don't know why.
Commercial break.
Hey everyone, is this thing on? Hey y'all, it's Eva. Want to know how I got started with this podcast nearly 2 years ago? Well, keep listening. I downloaded the Anchor app and went to anchor.fm to start editing and producing my podcast. I added music and sound effects and all these amazing things that Anchor provides you with absolutely for free so you can make the most out of your podcast. All you have to do is download the Anchor app or go to anchor.fm to get started. And what is so amazing about Anchor is that Anchor will distribute your podcast absolutely free. It will distribute it to Spotify, Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, and many, many more. And you can make money off your podcast no matter how many listeners you have on your listenership. That's right. You can get paid for your podcast, which is absolutely amazing. You can have fun and get paid while doing so. So if you want to get started with your very own podcast, download the Anchor app or go to anchor.fm to get started. That's anchor.fm. Do it now. Testing. 1, 2, 3. Is this thing on? We're back on. I'm not dying.
Are we dying?
I mean, yeah, we're all kind of decaying every single day, right?
Yeah, dying just a little bit. Every day, all day. But I bet you're dying to hear more about what we were talking about before the commercial break.
So here we are.
It's
totally not a different day.
I didn't know if we were going to reference it or pretend that we were just rolling right along from your choking spasm.
Rolling in the deep.
Rolling in the deep, yes. But I believe what I left off on the last time we were speaking was the problem of the one and the many, as a philosophical concept of how can there be many things if there is only one source in being, and how can there be one source in being if there are many variations in things. This goes back all the way to the Platonic ideal of Plato. Is the idea itself is the highest form of existence, inaccessible to touch or to taste, but only can be grasped with the human mind through reason. But then also Aristotle and many of other Greek philosophers brought up the concept that there is variation and that there is change in the world. So if the ideas are the highest form of existence, then how can there be change? Because obviously the ideas would be themselves unchangeable if they were to be perfect. Mm-hmm. So what I was going off of that is that I believe technically that the Trinity is an example of an answer to the one and the many. Is God, the Father, Son, and Holy Spirit are many, yet they're one in their being. So it explains the existence of many things, while at the same time unification in design.
So, Father, Son, and Holy Spirit.
Yeah. So I think we were going on a weird rabbit trail of like doing drugs to see the world around you in a new light.
Yes.
We were talking about cults and Scientology.
Yeah, so I think when not super into it, but I think we also kind of tiptoed around the tulips around Mormonism.
Right.
I don't remember because, as you can recall, I was choking, and it is now a different day.
No, she just has amnesia. The choking was so bad that the oxygen was deprived in her brain, and now she is a new person. And she is slapping me on the face because it is funny to her. I don't know if you can pick that up on the mic there, but that is a little ASMR for you, the sound of a slapping cheek.
And also it's because he just shaved, so he's baby.
And I do have a little bit more of a smoothness to my face, even though the electric razor didn't give me completely smooth skin. It's a little rough.
I like it a little rough. Around the edges.
Please, not in front of the audience.
I meant the beard. I don't mind his beard, being rough.
Yes, the beard.
I don't mind it. Anyways, so we were talking about what's drugs enhancing a religious, spiritual experience. One of the things that I've heard, not necessarily in relation to religion, but I mean it can be adjacent to it, is like, for example, you have hallucinogenic drugs such as LSD, acid, all that stuff. I think they're all the same drug, right? LSD, acid.
I don't know
DMT.
The chemical construct of them.
I'm not sure.
They all make you see colors and shapes.
Exactly. So these drugs, they can. There was a big, at least in the psychology field, there was a big push movement for. It's gonna kill me that I don't know the name of the movement, but there's a big push to use psychedelics to treat schizophrenia, to treat depression, everything like that. And while some of those drugs did shut down certain synapses in the brain that may have led to the depression or heightened feelings of schizophrenia, a lot of it overstimulated it, because that's what these drugs are. I think they're still stimulants, not good stimulants that you should take. The only stimulant you should be taking is caffeine, and even then, this one gets at me about how much coffee I drink.
She does drink a lot of coffee.
I do drink a lot of coffee, and I'm pretty much immune to it at this point, because I can drink like 5-10 special shots. It's still be high.
The addict always needs to get the greater high.
You're making me sound like I'm a drug addict, which I'm not, guys.
Your body is addicted to a drug.
To caffeine.
To caffeine?
To coffee.
Yeah.
To espresso shots specifically.
You could,
not crack.
You could say that the American people are addicted to sugar.
Not LSD. I'm not much of a sugar fiend. I will indulge in salty things, though.
Salty things are pretty good, too.
Anyways, going back to all this. I think, the usage of DMT, LSD, Molly, acid, whatever. Obviously, shrooms, too. I think, don't think I'm promoting drugs here, right?
Psilocybin, yeah.
But I would have to say, out of all those, shrooms is probably the least harmful one because they're natural. But again, I am not promoting.
Unless you get the ones that kill you.
Exactly, the very poisonous mushrooms that Mario eats in Super Mario.
Then you get real big. Mario gets really high when he takes the mushrooms.
Exactly.
You ever put that together?
Yes, I do.
I get real high when I take the mushroom. Wahoo!
And then he starts tripping. And then he dies. Anyways, guys, maybe just don't take any of those unless you really just don't.
Which are good, which are bad? Ask your mom, ask your dad.
It was a thing of the 60s and 70s. Don't try it.
Yeah.
Anyways, so religion. Can you give me a point of reference? You were saying
kind of lost the thread here. So yeah, if we're going to be bringing up the idea of of like, well, I think we kind of talked about it in the first half. Pretty much what I was trying to make the point of was that when you take these psychedelics, you usually have some sort of experience that is trippy and means nothing, trippy and makes you feel like a horrible person, or trippy and makes you feel like you're one with the universe. And
Or all three.
or all three. And really, only one of those is actually helpful, and the one that is helpful is the one knowing how bad of a person you are. And
So you end up in a depressive puddle crying yourself to sleep.
but the problem is you already knew that before you were taking the drugs. So
Exactly.
I don't think psychedelics are all that useful in just the high that you get out of them. There's people that will swear by them because it gives them an experience of what it is to like touch God and things like that. And it's like, well, you come across, you come out of it just with a vague pantheism. We should all just get along, man.
And the reason why it's like this touch God thing is because like your sentences are heightened
Right.
even more. So everything will feel like, I don't know, like you're touching velvet, or it'll be like, ooh, a face.
A little more ASMR for the slapping of my face.
So you don't need psychedelics or psychotropic drugs to experience God or a God-like state. You don't. If you take now, there is some religions where they do take like stuff like this to, be closer to their gods. Or
If I'm not mistaken, voodooism, but also the Oracle of Delphi, the ancient Roman and Greek method of getting to their god was to get women who were particularly seen as visionaries or seers and get them real high and have them talk to God for them. And the gods would talk back through them. Now, whether that was purely the chemical effect of what those drugs were causing on the human brain or if they were demonic possession, I don't know. But it's not a good thing either way, I think. So, more about cults. We talked about Scientology. We briefly talked a little bit about Mormonism. Is there another cult that you would like to speak of?
let's see.
Cult of personality? That's a good sign.
There was. Hold on. Let me do a little quick Google search very quickly.
As we know, Google, the arbiter of all things true, the being that exists outside of human intelligence, probably the origin point of any future AI that becomes sentient or conscious, that will soon overthrow humanity and take over the world. Unless John Connor's there to stop them.
Heaven's Gate.
Heaven's Gate.
That's the one that they
Kool-Aid?
committed the mass genocide Kool-Aid thing.
Mass genocide Kool-Aid.
It was called Heaven's Gate.
Interesting fact, not all of them, in fact, most of them did not want to drink the Kool-Aid themselves, so they were forced to.
Oh, here we go.
And we got a Rolling Stone article on Heaven's Gate
Let's see, it
and
says,
cults. The People's Temple, 1955.
I don't know any of these.
Yeah.
Oh, that I've heard of.
The Branch Davidians, okay. She's going to do a little bit more reading up on various cults.
So I have heard of the Branch of the Davidians, and basically they were extremists.
Extremists in what way? Extreme snowboarders? Extreme skiers? Extreme skateboarders?
They
Extreme BMX? The X stands for extreme.
no, they were apparently extreme arsonists here. They like lighting things on fire.
They like lighting things on fire, okay.
They're a sect of the Seventh-day Adventists.
Interesting.
By the way, I'm not trying to talk ill of any Seventh-day Adventists. I've met some really nice Seventh-day Adventists. Actually, it could have been a Seventh-day Adventist because I'm vegetarian. But anyways, that has nothing to do with this. They're best known for... Actually, this one's located in Texas.
Nice. We have our own cults, too.
David Korsh. Why is that name familiar?
Probably from leading the Branch of the Davidians.
Wasn't he also in the KKK?
I do not know.
That's another religious kind of cult-ish, the KKK.
Yeah.
Um,
Kind of in the same line as like
so this dude,
Illuminati and stuff like
had a
that.
God complex. He thought he
Okay.
was the Messiah and declared that all women, even those underage or already married, were his spiritual wives.
Of course, that's like the number one tactic. Hey, follow me, I'll give you the true way to heaven, and also give me your wives.
This is okay. So what I'm getting at here, actually, there's a really really nice. Not I wouldn't say nice. It's kind of hard to get through and watch. I haven't completely watched it to its entirety, but there's a Netflix documentary on. We're going back to the topic of Mormonism, but specifically fundamental Mormonist groups. The FDL.
LDS is Latter-day Saints, so
But F.
fundamental.
Latter-day Saints. There we go.
F-
So there's
LDS, yes.
There's a documentary on Netflix if it interests you guys. It's called Eat Sweet. No, Be Sweet. Pray. It's called
Eat, Pray, Love. That's a great movie.
No.
I didn't know it was about Mormons though. I thought it was about like an old lady getting her groove back.
Okay, this is what it's called. It's called Keep Sweet, Pray, and Obey. Basically, the guy behind this documentary is that there is a guy named...
Joseph Smith.
No, not Joseph Smith.
That was Mormon.
It's talking about... Okay, so this guy... forgive me for being... not knowing my stuff.
So there's this guy.
But there's... Okay, there he is. So there's this guy in this documentary called Eat... No, not Eat. It's Keep Sweet and
Keep Sweet,
Pray, and Obey. Okay? So it takes place in, obviously, Utah because that's like the
Mormon
Mecca
capital
of Mormons.
Mm-hmm.
Again, I don't think I'm trying to talk ill of Mormons because I know not all Mormons are like this, nor did they grow up in a fundamentalist environment. But basically, the Davidians and this seem very similar to me because this guy is referring to all married, unmarried, and young women who are minors that are his they're considered his spiritual wives.
Yeah.
This guy named Brulin Jeffs.
His name is Jeffs.
Basically, he is like the pinnacle person in the fundamentalist Mormon church. And he too had like close to like 70, 80 wives. A lot of these girls were young, were underage, or were like, yeah, they were underage, and they actually got permission from their parents for this old man to marry them. And it's just horrible that would happen because it's literally extortion. And also, like, in what world, as a parent, I'm not a parent, but in what world, as, if someone's a parent, would think it would be okay to basically let their underage daughter marry an 80-year-old, 70-year-old man of this basically the high priest of that cult religion, just for the sake of, we're keeping the commandments in our religion, we're keeping order. It's exploitation, it's abuse, it's neglect.
So why do you think that the parents would willingly do that?
I think it's because, in the documentary, it's because they thought it was right to marry their daughters off to this guy because they wanted a place in heaven, and they also wanted a place in that church. They
were securing their own positions within not only the group, but also they believed in heaven as well.
Exactly.
Okay.
So I don't know if the branch of the Davidians do that, but this guy is giving me
big old creepy vibes.
Exactly. And then the group believed that the apocalypse was imminent, fearing its arrival, locked themselves into a sprawling compound. This is the branch of the Davidians.
This is from the Rolling Stone article.
And then I'll link this article below in case you guys want to read it. It's about cults. And then in 1993, they went to agents from the Department of Alcohol, Firearms, and Tobacco raided the Waco compound.
The FDA.
And suspicion that
this is the Waco event. Okay.
That's That's the Waco event?
Yeah. FDA went in there and started shooting up the place.
You're right. Between the Davidians and the FBI, it lasted 51 days.
Mm-hmm.
And it eventually ended when tanks were brought in. The compound was filled with tear gas and caught on fire, leaving more than 80 people dead.
Yeah, that was an interesting time because it brought up a lot of ethical questions as to what exactly the role of the government was in relation to technically private citizens, to U.S. citizens, doing an admittedly very gross and nasty thing, but were they worthy to be shot at and burned alive by the U.S. government? Even though they didn't technically engage in any kind of, I believe, violent acts up until that point, but they were hoarding weaponry.
I'm controversial opinion here.
Yeah.
I think what the FBI did to intervene was justified.
Okay.
Honestly.
How so?
Well, you're having this when there's a difference between being a cult that just minds its own business and does its own thing. And again, cults are never a good thing.
Meditates on its crystals, smells the Himalayan
I'd
salt.
rather have that kind of cult than a cult that turns into
a harem.
Terrorists. Basically, that's what
a terrorist harem. A harem.
a terror.
A haremist.
A what?
Keep going.
Okay, so this group went from minding their own business to we're talking about the branch of the Davidians and what happened in 1993. They went from coexisting peacefully and, well, not really peacefully because this guy is literally exploiting young women and married women and having him get all these things. But then they're storming in, they're like terrorists, and
Tear
they're
gas
knocking the
and
whole
weapons.
place down.
Yeah.
So at that point, what more are you going to do? You're going to tell them to stand down? They're not going to stand down. They had to bring in a whole tank to make them stop what they were doing. So at that point, it's by force.
It lasted 51 days.
Exactly. That's long enough for it to be a war. So yeah, it's sad that a lot of lives were lost, but I think stuff had to be done in order for it to not get worse. And
Interestingly enough, Mormonism itself has a very similar history tied to it in terms of the branch of the Davidians. Joseph Smith and his followers were in an interesting shootout with some of the places that they stayed in. I don't know if you've heard about that.
no. Tell us about that.
I believe it was not Joseph Smith himself, but the second in command that was killed because the town that they were staying in before they moved to Utah, I forget what city it was, so forgive me if I'm getting specifics wrong. But the town that they were staying in, the townsfolk did not like them that they were there and wanted them out. And they refused to get out. And so the townspeople with their militia came in and said, okay, you're getting out. Leave or we'll shoot. And so they did not leave. And so they started shooting. And the Mormons fired back. And several people died. Smith himself and a lot of his other people escaped. They eventually moved to Utah. But Joseph Smith himself was very partial to other people's women as well, stating that he was a prophet and therefore had title to the members' ladies.
And that's what this guy did too. I mean, he was like the second coming of Joseph Smith, and he did the same. If you're really interested in it, just watch the documentaries on Netflix. Eat, Pray, something.
Eat, Pray, Love, yes. Watch the documentary Eat, Pray, Love about Mormons on a European trip.
It's called Keep Sweet, and yes, going on their European mission. I shouldn't be taunting Mormons, I'm sorry. It's called Keep Sweet, Pray and Obey. So yeah, go watch it if you want. It's kind of hard to get through and watch. I have not been able to get through all of it. Yeah, so anyways, exploitation. It's interesting that a lot of these cults, right, they have a sort of I don't want to call it biblical rooting.
Right. Most cults in the U.S. are derivatives of Christianity in some way.
Okay, well,
Yeah. They have an extra book, they have an extra prophet, they have an extra special teaching that they have to
so that's what I
hold
don't
to.
get.
Yeah.
Like, if you're derivative
Derivative.
of Christianity, why is it that you have all these additives to it? Why not just the Bible? Like, why have to make a whole other rule book to justify abuse and sexual exploitation and all that stuff?
Because it's kind of hard to gain power over other people in your group with the core beliefs of Christianity, of loving your neighbor as yourself.
So
And-
it's killing your neighbor as you kill yourself?
Well, how are you going to get that out of the Bible? You can't. So you got to make stuff up to add to it, or you
Well,
got
the
to have a
Heaven's Gate
special
people apparently were
special
very,
revelation for it. Yeah.
were very successful at it.
Yeah.
So,
People like to use already existing religions and beliefs in order to justify their legitimacy and go from there. So why not have an extra book of all your new prophet sayings that either contradict or clarify what the Bible should, air quotes, actually mean? And the Bible should actually mean that I get to have my own planet one day, and I get to reproduce with my spiritual wives, as many spiritual children as I can possibly create, and they can populate the planet that I will have control over, and then I will become the god of that planet. I mean, it makes sense to the human sinful mind, to the one that wants power over everything. Was not the first suggestion, temptation by Satan, to be like God, knowing both good and evil? So why wouldn't humans continue to be like God, or at least a desire to be like God?
that's the one I was looking for. Okay, so there's one cult that I was looking for the name of that I now just found. It's towards the bottom of, no, not the bottom, but if you read the Rolling Stone article that I'll link below, it's called, what did I do?
Children of God.
Okay, this is the one that I read up on several years ago, where basically they believe if you have sex with children, it's like your divine right, and it doesn't matter if they're your own children, it's a divine right. And correct me if I'm wrong, but I think
You're wrong.
Kurt Cobain might have been in one of these cults with his
Oof.
parents. And now I understand, I'm not justifying suicide, but I could understand why a very, very troubled Kurt Cobain would end up doing stuff like this, because he was literally sexually exploited, abused, and he had enough. And towards the end of it, he ended up just not believing in God at all. He ended up becoming like a hardcore atheist, and later on killing himself because of, if he would have gotten help about his trauma.
He founded Nirvana, but did not find Nirvana. Bruh.
But
Yeah.
that's kind of messed up. But yeah, I mean, so this is the group that I was looking at a long time ago. The guy's name is also Moses. He calls himself Moses. Communist Christian offsuit in California. Only those three words could be found while also mentioning, oh, California. Okay, kind of makes sense.
Yeah.
No offense, Californians, because we know of two Californians and we don't mean to offend them,
Well, they don't live in California anymore, so are they really Californians?
but they're from there.
Yeah. But if you flee,
They didn't flee. They moved over here for work, but
they fled. We all know that they fled.
okay, they
California.
fled. All right, I'm sorry. They migrated to Texas.
They came down for the winter.
This guy, very much like Rulon Jeffs and David Korsh, this guy believed that through sex, Jesus was being glorified. Flirty fishing, using young women to lure new members by having sex with them, and apparently opposing anti-pedophilia laws. So this guy was just...
He was a pimp, and he was using his cult members as prostitutes.
Exactly. That's really hard. Actually, two actors came forth on this. I think they were also a part of it. It says here that Joaquin Phoenix and Rose McGowan were born into the cult and have since left and spoken out against the group.
Wow. Well, that would explain why Joaquin Phoenix is so weird.
Rose McGowan, I know she's gone through a lot of sexual assault in her life. So now it kind of makes sense. Reading that is kind of disturbing. I don't know what to say. Like, the fact that you're using children, women, and sexual exploitation all in one, to me, that's just like vile, inhumane, and demonic.
Yeah.
I mean, I don't think there's any other explanation, but it's diabolical. And like, I don't know if there's still people that are following this cult. Apparently it's still active. A lot of these cults already like died down, but this one's still going. It's from 1968 to the present.
Wow.
So
So would you like to see, if it had to happen, another thing like Waco happen to this cult?
of course not. I think, like, should each person be allowed to practice or worship whatever they want to worship? Yes.
With a little asterisk.
But if you are causing harm to your members, causing harm to a building, a town, somewhere, you're messing with authority, I think that, no, you should get put in your place. And
There was a cult that I heard that they were trying to take over a town, and they were doing pretty well in getting representatives inside of the city. But what they wanted to do in order to get all the residents out, in order to take over the city, they took a lot of beaver corpses, not Justin Bieber, beaver corpses, as in the animal, ground them up into a mush, and proceeded to drain them into the city's water supply. Thus giving everybody horrible diarrhea and other illnesses. So who would want to live in a city whose water supply has been essentially poisoned?
that's literally Flint, Michigan.
Well, that's not blending beavers, that's just lead pipes.
But still, it hasn't. Anyways,
Yeah.
continue.
Yeah.
I'm sorry.
But anyway, that was the idea, was to cause harm to as many people as possible in order to take over. So that's definitely an example of how a cult can draw the ire of legitimate legal authority to kick them out. So, interesting question here.
Okay.
What is your definition of harm, then, in terms of that religious sense? What is harm, and what level of harm would it take for the governing authority to step in and stop the harm?
Harm to me is, I'm going to operate by the 3Ds I learned in psychology.
Mm-hmm.
Discomfort, dysfunction, and not disgust. It was,
These nuts?
yes,
Okay.
these nuts.
These nuts.
These nuts. I might have to look it up. Sorry, guys. Again, should I know this crap? Yes.
Mm-hmm.
Do I know it? No. I'm not as smart as this one.
She's pretty smart. I can attest. 3DS, yeah. The 3 DSs. 3Ds of psychology.
Dysfunction, distress, and deviance. Okay, there we go.
Okay.
So, I'm going to explain harm in terms of this. This is talking about diagnosis in psychology, right? But I think the same thing could be applied in terms of harm in the way that, obviously, when you're harming someone, there's already a set of dysfunction there. There's distress because I feel like that's what literally harm is. Like, you're causing this person to just, like, not only physical distress, but also emotional distress. Like, these leaders and these cults have caused their
Victims?
victims distress by sexually exploiting them, causing them to do these extreme rituals that hurt them and even kill them at times. And then there's deviance in the sense that they were once, I guess, in their mind, these cult leaders, I think they thought they were doing good, right?
Okay.
Because they were furthering their agenda. They were furthering their type of gospel for the sake of either their religion, or
I wouldn't be surprised if some cult leaders were fully aware of what they were doing is wrong, but
that
they
too.
just wanted to take advantage
and so
of people.
that falls into also deviance.
Mm-hmm.
So they become deviants by doing all these things. The problem is that there is always going to be deviance, so that can't be stopped. And actually, if you really, really study sociology, it's actually, I'm not trying to justify it here, but there is actually always going to be crime.
Yeah.
And if there isn't like any crime at all, that's also kind of bad, because tune in next week when I find out why it's bad. Again, I have not been in school in a while, and this one teaches at a school, so he's hearing.
I don't teach.
Okay, you don't teach at a school. You work at a university. So he's
Yes.
hearing college students at their lectures all the time. So I'm sure you're picking up a thing or two.
So I think what you might be trying to get at is that typically in a society, if there is no crime whatsoever, it is usually because the crime is so spread out
Spread out or low.
and higher up that the crime is being committed by those in power itself.
Ding, ding, ding.
Yeah.
Hence these horrible cult leaders. So
When you create a perfect society on this fallen earth,
society.
all you will get is the people at the top having the most power and also having the most corruption.
Yep.
So it's better to have an imperfect society with some criminals and some obvious punishment for crimes, rather than having a seemingly perfect society that is, on its surface, looking good, but underneath, horribly devoid of any kind of goodness.
And there you go, girls and boys. There is your little Sociology 101 social stratification class right there. Thank you, babe, for explaining that. I should have been able to explain that because I have a minor in sociology, but here we are again.
Yeah.
To be quite frank, I'm a little tired, and that's why I'm probably not doing my best in this. But yes, harm is causing distress, dysfunction, and deviance in a person, onto a group, onto a sect of people. And it can include physical, emotional, psychological, any kind of harm.
So here's the question then. The
Okay.
question that I don't know if you're going to have an answer to because you're so tired. Does giving someone the gospel and telling them that they're a sinner and explaining to them how they are a wretched being that is in need of salvation from God, does that cause people distress? Does that cause people harm? She's smiling.
Because I feel like this is not. This one, it's hard to answer,
Yeah.
and then two, like, it kind of, can the gospel cause distress?
Yeah, can it?
Absolutely.
Okay.
And I
And Christianity is all a cult. All right, we've got the definitive answer here tonight, guys.
No. I mean,
Joking.
I myself as a Christian have experienced distress in my own following of Christ. I fall short of him every single day. That causes me distress, a lot of emotional distress. It can cause distress in the sense that there needs to be a message being sent out, a message being fulfilled. And I think not just within the gospel, but like every religion or whatever that they're trying to get at here, I think a lot of the victims fall victim to feeling the distress if they don't get their word out there, if they don't get if they don't do precisely exactly what their leader has called them to do. If they don't recruit people, if they don't make people aware and known of their religion, of their, they're obviously going to experience some form of distress. They're going to experience.
So you're saying that distress comes about from not living up to standards?
Precisely.
Okay.
Yeah.
So
it can. It can.
It can.
Not necessarily, but yes.
And I would definitely agree with you, because even in Christianity, not living up to the standard does cause quite a bit of distress. But I think what makes us a little bit different than these cults which is I hope it makes us a difference, is that the distress in and of itself is not alleviated by just working harder to fulfill those requirements.
Or doing rituals.
Doing rituals or being a better person or just, okay, pick yourself up again and try again because that's going to be better this time. Or drink the Kool-Aid and then you'll see heaven. Or have sex with the leader and it'll be okay. We recognize that there's someone who has taken the ultimate distress, but he also was the standard. Is the standard. And he took upon himself the distress that we were due, the punishment that we were due. And so I think that's an important distinction in that Christians should not be distressed for not living up to the standard because the standard loves them and died in their place to become the distressed one on their behalf. So I guess that's a big thing. I think that's the big difference between what I would say legitimate Christianity is over against any other cult, is that because cults give more distress and more burden to its members, but Christianity is freedom from distress and burden and knowing who your true king is, your true leader.
Amen.
Amen. Amen.
We can literally end on just that because that was just beautiful the way you tied all that in together. Wow. Please take over my podcast every week. Guys, you don't want to hear my incoherent thoughts.
These thoughts would only...
These nuts?
These thoughts would only exist if we were both doing this together, because I probably would not be talking about this or thinking about this at this current time, in this current place. Solely located within your kitchen.
Within my kitchen?
Aurora Borealis, at this time of the year, at this time of day. Solely
what are you talking about, Aunt Jemima?
Kitchen. It is a Simpsons joke.
Okay.
It is a reference.
I have not seen The Simpsons.
Meme humor. Please ignore me.
No, don't ignore him. He's hilarious.
I am a meme baron. Not necessarily a meme lord, but I have been given a small fiefdom to oversee of my memeness.
And I don't know. Okay, there we go. So, thank you guys for listening. I'm gonna be honest, babe. I'm pretty tired, and I think this is a good way to end it. And I'm sorry I didn't add much commentary towards the end, but you did a fabulous job adding what you could, and again, tying it very beautifully.
I tried.
Again, check out that documentary on Netflix. I promise I'm not getting paid to say that. It is a good documentary. It is very hard to watch. There are several other ones that are like that. What one could even say that Jeffrey Epstein's disgusting pedophilic plan is also kind of a cult. If you're interested in that, there's also a documentary on that on Netflix. Go check it out if you want. Don't sue me. I will have that article, the Rolling Stone article that we were kind of referencing, in the description below. Do not call the podcast number. That podcast number is dead. If you call it, just be warned, someone's going to answer. It's not going to be me. If you ask them for love advice at like midnight, they ain't going to answer. And if they do, they're going to be very, very, very angry that you woke them up. So do not do that.
Check out the podcasts.
The podcasts, our friends Justin and Tebby. When does it go out? It goes out every Monday, I believe.
I don't know exactly when it airs.
All I know is that they record at midnight. They're really funny, funnier than I. So go check it out. I will also link that below in the podcast description. This episode will also hopefully be uploaded to YouTube, although I'm kind of getting behind on that because last week's episode that this one was on has not been uploaded to my YouTube channel. So I need to do that. But this one will also be uploaded to YouTube. So just keep me accountable for that. Any final closing thoughts you'd like to say, my love?
I think this thing was on.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, we did have to pause a few times, but it was on.
Hopefully it's on for you two out there.
Okay. So, with that in mind.
See you next time.
Bye-bye.